So we've all had our struggles, our challenges. That's why we're here. The organizers decided to subtitle this weekend, this Shabbaton, Journeys. You've seen it on the signs. And the thinking they had behind this is for us to share our journeys with each other. Here was the hope. The hope was that we could share our journeys, our challenges with each other. The successes, the things that weren't so successful. We should talk to each other. And those of us presenting can talk more openly about our own struggles and challenges and how we made it through. For us, my wife and I, it's been, well, we're debating it the whole weekend so far, but I'm safe to say more than 25 years of struggling with this sugya. We've been in this parsha for that long, quarter of a century, most of our married life. And so there's a lot of perspective we have that I'd like to share about our journey, where it's taken us, what it was about, and what we learned on the way. I can tell you that in the early days, I know that now we present in a way that for many may seem a little unattainable. How do you get there to that place of peace, a place of confidence and comfort? When we went through this, when we started, we felt terribly alone. I'll be very honest. We were horribly judged, criticized. It was an unbelievably painful experience that left us at times really honestly feeling so alone and rejected and humiliated. At that time when we started our journey, our eldest daughter, we have 8 children, our eldest daughter turned 14 and rather spectacularly went sort of OTD. She went off the derech. We were shocked. It caught us by surprise. We knew school had been difficult. We knew there had been challenges. But we were really, really caught by surprise when we were confronted with this fact that she was running around with boys, and in those days she was caught in a pizza store with a boy. And we were called in right away to be told about this terrible disaster. We really didn't have support or understanding. There was none of this. There was nothing. There was actually nothing except shame and humiliation. We didn't see the warning signs at all. We knew that she had had a sort of anxiety condition. We knew that she had some sort of learning problems. It wasn't until 8th grade that we really got a proper tfisa on what that learning problem really was. Processing problem, we didn't know. What we didn't understand at all, and I never heard of the word despite already being in the profession, I really didn't understand yet the concept of attachment. Beneath her, our second child was one of a twin, the other was stillborn, and he had a host of medical challenges. By 1.5, he stopped growing. He had malnutrition, rickets, all sorts of problems, but they didn't know what the problem really was. We spent a lot of time researching it till we found out he had hypoplastic kidneys, and he had his first kidney transplant when he was 3. My wife gave him his first kidney. What we didn't understand at all was the impact of our focus, our life-saving focus on him, had on his older sister and his younger sister. We dedicated our lives to trying to save his life. And in doing so, unwittingly, developed a serious attachment disorder in the two sisters, the one above and below. Of course, we had no clue. We never heard the word, really. We didn't relate to it as being a problem. On one occasion, we were told for about a week that his dire medical issues demanded feeding him high-caloric liquid through his nose with a tube as a baby of about a year and a half old. And this awful nightmare of trying to do that, pin him down and hold him still to get this tube down. During this process, we were completely unaware that behind us, his sister, who was between 18 months and 2 years, I guess, was there trying to pull us off him. Why are you hurting him? Stop hurting him. And we, in the trauma of those moments, had no clue she was even there, trying to stop us. In her journey with a processing problem, an anxiety issue, and very poor attachments with us, she slowly but surely began to spiral away. The Makiva Patish of her decline and her journey began when she was babysitting one night with a friend of hers, 2 girls. And this other friend had a brother who was in a yeshiva nearby for struggling kids. And that night, this brother and a friend of his went over to schmooze with these 2 girls who were babysitting. They tried to advance the schmoozing. Let's leave it at that. And the girls resisted. Later on, after the babysitting was over, the boys who had a car picked up these 2 girls and they took them to Point Pleasant and they parked in the far corner of a massage parlor, a place of ill repute. And they waited with the lights off, the boys intending to show these 2 girls that no one really keeps this whole thing properly. Why are you being so makpid and strong? And lo and behold, in the course of the evening, 2 men from our community appeared at this massage parlor, one of whom she knew. That was more than she could possibly cope. That was sexual abuse. Little did we know. We didn't understand at all in those days. But that sealed her fate. She actually once told me years later that was probably the moment when her life went south, when it was over. So started for us a journey that was awful. It was painful. There were no guides. I certainly wasn't me. I had no clue. We made all the mistakes that we keep trying to guide everyone not to do. One of them was listening to people who knew nothing about the sugya. Probably the worst mistake of all. We didn't follow our intuition and tune into what we knew our kids needed, but we listened. I questioned my profession. I considered changing it and becoming a lawyer. I was done. I felt inauthentic. I felt like a hypocrite. I knew what people were saying about me. Why she was struggling. I had gone to the secular psychology, We searched rather desperately for guidance and help, and we found none. We had no real people who knew anything. We did have some supportive friends and Rabbanim, but no one with actual information and guidance. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. So began our journey. I say this because I want you to understand that we developed what we developed, this program, this process, through desperation and personal experience. We have tried it out for years. Not only have I done it clinically, but I did it with our own children. And we see what works and what doesn't. I hope I bring this as sort of authenticity. It's my business card that gives me the right to talk. We didn't understand, most of all, the connection between trauma and what was happening with our children. We actually were, at the beginning, still buying into the fact that it was obviously our crummy parenting that had caused this. It was us. We clearly didn't know what we were doing. That's where we started our journey. I hope through the course of what I'm going to talk about today that we'll come to a brighter picture. But I at least want to start with honesty where we were. For those of you who can relate to it, I'm guessing most can. Interestingly enough, as I was searching for a mahalach, the earliest approach that I found was in a book on terminal illness by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, where she described 5 stages that people go through with terminal illness. And I was incredibly struck and resonated to how this is what we were going through. This was it. It was shocking to me. And I allowed myself, in the first attempt to make sense out of this, to go through the steps that she described and recognize that's where we were. The first of her 5 steps was denial. Everyone accused us of being in denial. It was a very painful experience. We were ripped by mechanchim and neighbors and friends and relatives about being such denial about our kids. Later on, as I worked on this word denial, I came to terms with the fact that Ribbono Shel Olam alone creates all midas. We don't create any. We just get to use the ones He created and gave to us to use in this world. And therefore it dawned on me that denial must be a useful thing. If Hashem created it, it has to be used for something useful. Well, denial became, I think, in a certain way, it becomes your best friend. Because if you really don't know what's happening to your kids, and if you don't understand what's really going on with them, I said life is challenging. This is all part of it. But if you don't know, then the chances are whatever you're doing is going to be mazik. It's going to be the wrong thing. You're going to react out of fear. You're going to react out of anxiety, embarrassment, shame, and do something wrong. Later on, I told people, many of my clients, if you're accused of being in denial, which, by the way, everyone is at some point, well, you know what? Denial's a good place to be. Until you can work out what to do with the sugya. Until you can work out how to deal with it properly, it may not be a bad idea. So I understood that denial was my friend, it wasn't my enemy. And I stopped being hurt about people saying you're in denial and started embracing the fact that, well, my kids are probably a lot better off that I'm in denial because I haven't a clue what to do and how to help them. As I recommend to people, and I say this humbly to anyone here, just in case you're still a little in denial, stay there a little longer. It's not such a bad place to be. And you may consider only coming out when you're ready to know what to do that's helpful instead of hurtful. That's why Hashem gave us that midah. Use it for what it's worth. After denial, she came to bargaining. When you come out of denial, When you come out of denial, the first thing you do is get angry. You get angry. And you find yourself angry at yourself. I was. You, unfortunately, and I've asked Mechila on this many times, you get angry with your spouse. You get pulled into a debate because everything seems so desperate. It all seems as if every decision, every choice that you're making every day and every night seems to be the one that's either going to save the day or destroy the day. And when you feel that passionate and that frightened, there's an attempt to control each other about don't do this or do that. You say it, you do it. You have to get this, you have to speak to them. There's this passionate debate as if it's like in the moment this is going to be the life-saving intervention. It's not, but it feels that way. And in the anger, you can get angry with yourself, with each other, angry with Hashem. Why are you doing this to me? You get angry with the schools. You get very angry with the friend who seems to have brought down your kid, the one who befriended her or him. You get angry with them and with their parents. You just get angry. But it's a stage, Rabbi say. It's a stage you go through. It's a very normal human experience. After anger came bargaining. We bargained. We Jews, we bargain. We say Tehillim, we'll daven, we'll make commitments, we'll make, all sorts of, Kabbalahs for all sorts of things that we probably should have been doing anyway. But now we use this excuse to try and be mechazik ourselves. I'm not speaking Lashon Hara for 30 days. We'll go to the Kosel for 40 days. We'll finish Tehillim every week. We bargain with the kids. I'll buy you any amount of clothing as long as they're tzniistic, sort of, more or less. Unlimited, here's the checkbook. We bargain with the kids. It's all a waste of time. It doesn't do anything. It just delays the inevitable. But it's also a normal human trait. We try to buy them back through prizes and rewards and threats and commitments. And it doesn't work. And when we get through the denial and the anger and the bargaining, then we need to mourn the loss of the picture and image of what I thought I had and was looking forward to with this child and this family of mine. I have to mourn the loss. I gotta let it go. I gotta let it go. I can't hang on to that picture anymore because it's getting in the way. So I have to mourn the loss that image, that picture is not going to be. And I need to do that so I can reach deeply, sincerely, in a wholesome and robust way, I can reach acceptance that this is the gift Hashem has given me, and this is my journey, and this is what my journey is going to be about. I have to reach acceptance and stop fighting it, but go with it, and go with my children on their journey. This is the journey. That 5-step picture guided us in the very, very early years that made sense out of madness, and it eased our pain as we walked towards acceptance, so that we could really be there to help our kids and stop fighting with them and stop hurting them and stop driving them further away. We had no idea then. We were working with one daughter off the derech, a son who was struggling with medical and other cognitive issues, and his younger sister who we didn't really understand the impact on her yet, but it was there. Little did we know that with the older 3 struggling and others with various learning disabilities and other struggles, we didn't know what was ahead of us. We certainly didn't understand that most of our children, I think 6 of them didn't graduate high school. Am I right? 6? That we only had 2 made it through high school because we had the foresight to take them out. and help them find their own way. We didn't know what we were getting into. But that was the early model of recovery. So in preparing my comments for today, I want to say, when I say I mean we, because my wife and I prepared this together and reviewed it together. If I slip into I, it means we. It's probably just no, it's probably ego. I don't know. But it actually, I mean we. Maybe it just flows easier when I'm talking. I don't know. But we've prepared this together and sort of analyzed, how did we get through this? What did we learn from this sugya that I could share after the organizers of Gedalia and the committee told us this is about journeys, our journeys. So what could we share that might be useful to others about the steps and stages we went through and the components that helped us to get to where we are today? That's what I want to talk about today. So here's the first step for us. And some of this, by the way, I'm aware that in the audience here, we have a lot of people, I'm told, who were never here before at Kesher Nafshi. So I will spend time also on fundamentals. For those of you who may know this already, I'm guessing you'll embrace it as Chazal Sashir, which never hurts. But at least it's an authentic model for me. The first thing we had to do was let go of unrealistic expectations. There's no question that we had in our brains, in our hearts and souls, when we had those children. We cry when we have a baby, right? I mean, even the most Kalta Litva cries, right, when you have a baby. We cry because of hope. It's a bechia of tikva. It's not a bechia of loss or pain, chas v'shalom. It's a bechia of tikva. It's like the real bechia that we should do on Tisha B'Av. A bechia of hope, for longing for Beis HaMikdash. It's a bechia that's mutter on Shabbos, by the way. For all those speaking on Shabbos, including me, it's mutter. It's a bechia of hope. So we hope, and we have longing and hope when we see these precious neshamas, and we have a bris and a kiddush, a shalom zocher, a bar mitzvah. We have tremendous hopes and beliefs. I know for myself, we absolutely believed we had these amazingly precious neshamas who were going to be Gedolei Yisrael. There wasn't any other option. It never occurred to us they would be anything other than Gedolei Yisrael. This was our hope and longing in this world. We all share this. Our daughters, we believed, were going to marry some Chashva Talmid Chacham, were going to be Sidkanias, Tznuim, role models for Klal Yisrael. We all believed that. We thought the neshamas of everyone in your own culture, but for us, we got the Brisker Rav over here. His neshama came back, and we got Sarah Schneer over here by the Kiddush. We got the best of the best, and we all thought that. Little do we know that everyone else thought the same thing. So chances were not high that we were zeicher to that neshama. We never considered any other option than that which our kids would simply steig away in school, do great in high school, go to Beis Medrash, go to yeshiva. She'd go to seminary, they both come back, they'll get married to beautiful shidduchim and sit in kollel and just be these marvelous people in Klal Yisrael. We actually never, ever considered any other possibility. In doing so, I'll be honest, we let our kids down. I'll be honest, we can have that. We're entitled to that as parents, to have beliefs and hopes and longing for our children. But we let them down when we don't consider or prepare them for any other possibility. What are we thinking? In doing so, we don't actually prepare them in a way that they're safe and secure. They do not feel seen as they go through their journeys, and they're already veering away from that picture that we want for them. And they realize this is what we want, but it's not internally what they want. So they don't feel seen either. We just never considered any other possibility. And so the first thing we had to do was let go of these very simplistic, wonderful, but simplistic aspirations of what we hoped for our children. And realize that was the extension of my wants and beliefs, but wasn't anchored into what my children actually needed. Because Chanech Al Pi Darkei says the opposite. It says the opposite. It says we're meant to look at them and find out how to help them be them. We had to understand and take responsibility for the fact that we didn't really understand what was going on inside our kids' neshamas. You know, we have these kids and we kind of impose upon them what we believe and want is right for them. But rarely do we really sit back and tune in to what's actually going on inside them. What's good for them? What's a good life for them? Who are they? Where do they fit in this world? So we had to understand that essentially we were very judgmental, and we had to stop judging them. And by judgmental I mean the criticism, the complaint, the underlying trying to steer them towards what I want, what we want, instead of really trying to attune to who are they and what's good for them. This is elementary in chinuch. And yet we were caught up, all of us, I believe all of us, where we kind of accepted this sort of systemic model of this is how your kid has to be. And in doing so, we failed them. So we had to let go of externally putting on our kids what we wanted them to be, but to try and start the shift to who are you? Who are you? And what do you need? And that meant letting go of all the dreams and beliefs of what we wanted, but to go from within, inside the children, to find out who are they. I've always said this line that, occasionally you hear about someone. You hear about a friend. Two friends are talking. Erev Shabbos in the mikveh. It's like mikveh, right? And say, yeah, you heard about Yankel? You heard what's going on with Yankel? Yeah, terrible. Yeah, Aside from Lashon Hara, it's basically stupid. It's stupid. Did you hear what's going on with Yankel? I heard he has a problem. Yeah, terrible. Maybe you could ask the question like this. Oi, did you hear what's going on with Yankel? Maybe we can help him. Did you hear what's going on with Yankel? I came to a klal early in life that when someone's behavior makes no sense to you, chances are you're missing information. Don't judge. Don't criticize. Don't say, what's going on with Yankel? It's what's going on. Chances are when it makes no sense, you're missing information. That's it. Nothing else. And I realized how true that is of our children. When we look at their behavior and it makes no sense to us, the first and only thing we have to embrace is that means I'm missing information. Not what's wrong with her. Why is he doing this? With an attitude of anger and frustration and disappointment and hurt. If their behavior makes no sense to you, it only means you're missing information, which has to make us seek what is that information. Anyone's behavior, but befrat our kids. We have to allow ourselves to be drawn into understanding. So what are we missing? What am I missing? What's really going on with them? We had to be we had to stop being busy trying to keep them in the system. We have, all of us, we have to come to terms with the fact that the system is there to help us, but there's no chiyuv that we have to keep our kids in the system. If it works for them, marvelous. If you can find a place, that's great. But if it's not working for them, take them out. There's no chiyuv to keep them in the system. We didn't know that. We had to learn it. We had to understand it. Take them out. We took 6 of them out before they finished high school because it made no sense. It was punitive. Imagine sending a kid into school day after day to simply feel like a total loser, to feel like these people don't want me here, and we had to bribe the school to keep them, beg them, sign contracts, and all that happens is the kid goes in feeling that I'm on parole, basically. I'm being watched. I'm not wanted here at all. What do you think that does to their neshamas? How does that make them feel about the whole system that we live in? Take them out. We mostly realized that we frequently waited too long to put them into a mossad that was right for them because we were embarrassed. I'll be very frank. You see your kids struggling, and we do everything we can to keep them in the better mossad. And we justify it. It's better kids, it's a better matzav, they won't be dragged down by the other kids. We have all these svaras in our brains. It's actually a terrible mistake. Keeping your child in a mossad where they don't belong, where they feel not wanted, not appreciated, tolerated, at best, where they're tolerated, is destroying their neshama. It's destroying their attachments. It's making the child realize how little you understand me and how little you really care about me. You're doing this for you, not for me, which is so damaging and dangerous to our children. We keep them in the wrong moistus too long because of our own shame, because we're embarrassed to tell our friends and relatives, yes, I sent my kid to Waterbury. Yes, I sent my kid to wherever. Whereas that's the perfect mossad for them. There couldn't be a better place to make them feel loved and cared for, where the place actually wants them. So we had to change that. And we had to find the strength to move quickly, to look at our children and see where do they need to be, not where do I want them to be, because that's going to hurt them directly in school and it's going to make them resent me. Most of all, we had to come to this place where we could learn to love and accept our children for who they were, not who we wanted them to be. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us these kids. Didn't give us other kids. He gave us these kids. And it is a fundamental right of a child to know that my mother and father love me. That is a right of a kid. And to fail them so terribly by making them feel that they're losers and you failed me it's awful. It's pashut awful. It was then, with all this awareness that I'm describing now, that we switched our home to crisis chinuch. I use the word crisis chinuch. I've been using it for 25 years. For those of you who've done other, like TP, you have other language, for our intent and purposes, the same thing. Crisis chinuch. It's just what I've always called it. We switched our home to crisis chinuch, knowing full well that the other children would now have to be brought up in this model too. That to save these, we were going to do this deadly thing called exposing our other children. But we accepted that that was what Hashem obviously wanted. Because He gave us these kids. He put them in our home. So it must have been If the only way we were going to save these older kids and help them was switching to crisis chinuch, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His infinite wisdom, chose to put these other children with them in this home, then He obviously knew they were going to be exposed. And to think anything else, it's not epicursis, it's tipshus. It's just foolish to think anything else. Hashem knew, so we accepted what He already knew, and we switched our home to crisis chinuch, and we went on the journey knowing that these exposures were going to happen, and that was obviously Hashem's will. And we were going to see what we could do to help all these children in this new mahalach. One of the things we had to internalize was to know that working with our children at the place they were at, which was outside the system, was outside the norms of our community, we let them go to the library. No, we did, I bet. We let them go to the library. There were times when we allowed the kids, these struggling kids, to watch a movie. We did. But what we had to embrace was what made us a failure was not that we had kids watching movies in the basement or in their bedrooms rather than be on the streets doing who knows what. That letting them get library books, that's not what made us into failures, even though we were told we were. What made us into failures was not doing that. That's what makes us a failure. Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a kid who needs that, then that's your hatzlacha. That's what your child needs. Who doesn't give their child poisonous medications when they need them if they're ill? We cut open our son to put a kidney inside him. Who doesn't do things to their kids when it's medically necessary that under other circumstances is a crime? What we understood was this was spiritually necessary. There's no difference. That's the yesod in crisis chinuch. There is no difference. What makes us a failure is when we let the ego get in the way to prevent us from doing what's right. That's the failure. Not from giving them a different picture that others outside will say, "Was epis? What are you doing?" One time I was accosted in the very early years when I made the decision and encouraged my wife to go to Blockbuster with our daughter to choose movies to watch. That was before the internet days. And she went discreetly with her and they chose movies to watch to keep her busy rather than having her on the streets doing who knows what. And a well-meaning teacher in the school discovered this and told one of my rebbeim, "You know why the Russell's kids are struggling? They let them watch movies." I was at a chasna in Borough Park, walked out of the chasna, where I met one of these rebbeim who ripped me to shreds in the street about how embarrassed he was of me as a Talmud, that I let my kids watch movies. I had the absolute clarity and confidence that this was absolutely no different than cutting open our other son to put a kidney in him to save his life. There was no difference. And I waited a number of years before I had the conversation with this Rebbe to explain it to him. We're a failure if we don't do what's right. We're certainly not failures when we have the strength to do what is right for our children. The entire Shita, the whole approach occurred and crystallized one day when I was driving back from Tzfat. I think I said this on that podcast. When our daughter was probably 15 or 16, we thought we'd had this nice Shabbos in Tzfat, and on the way back, she had some awful music playing full blast in the car. And I was just so upset, I can't tell you. After this wonderful, we'd flown to Israel just for a Shabbos in Tzfat to give us some inspiration. And here, right afterwards, we're driving Sunday morning, and she's like got heavy metal, whatever crazy music blaring full blast. We drove Derech HaBikam. When I got to Bet Shan, where you turn left, I pulled into the gas station and got out the car. I was in so much pain. Left the door open and just walked into the Jordan Valley just to get away from her and probably to get away from myself, I'm not sure, but to get away from the pain. And I just walked into the valley and just sat there crying. It just seemed so hopeless. I didn't know where we were going with this. And in that valley, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the words in my head that I needed to work with. And the words that came to me were, defy me more than I can love you. That I had to show her, you could try to defy me more than I can love you, and you'll fail. And when you fail, maybe we can repair your attachments and we can get you back. Defiance, I realized, is the medium of recovery, not compliance. When our kids comply, they're usually doing it because of pressure or guilt or threat of some sort, so they comply. That doesn't heal our relationship. But when our kids defy us and we embrace them with utter love and acceptance and understanding, we heal the attachments. Defiance works to repair. Compliance doesn't. Because all they think is when they dressed properly, they complied. When they went to Minyan, they complied. He put his tefillin on, he complied. The kid doesn't think I love you. The kid knows I love the fact you put on tefillin. I love the fact you went to davening. I love actually myself and feel better about myself because my kid went to daven. But when my kid defies me and doesn't go for years on end, and every Shabbos morning when I see him after davening, I say to him, "Oh, good Shabbos, how you doing? Yeah, kiddush and a piece of kokish cake. How you doing?" And I have no clue he did go or he didn't go. It's all irrelevant to me. What's relevant is I love him, and I want to show him that love. Defiance is what heals. Many, many years ago, I don't know the end of this story, I must tell you. The part that I do know, at the time it was helpful, very helpful. And I heard years later that the subject, the young man in this story, was doing well. I have no idea. It's decades ago, so I don't know. I hope and pray he's still doing well. But at the time, I had a call. I was the director at our place, the clinical director in Flatbush. And we got a call about a mother and son that had had a terrible fight, horrible fight. And he had cursed her badly. She had threatened him. And in this struggle, this horrible fight they had had, she'd had a beautiful vase that matched their china, their dinner china, an heirloom china set. There was a vase that matched it on some sort of pedestal in their dining room. And in his anger, he smashed that vase on the floor. She lost herself, admittedly. And she threw him out the house. And we got a call that he's somewhere on the streets, he's not going home. Can we help? I was round the corner. I was really, literally, a couple of blocks away. So one of our guys from our place went and found the boy. We found him, I think he was 15 or 16. We found him somewhere. And they calmed him down. And I told them, you just get him and wait for my call. And I went round to the house with her reshus to speak to this lady. When I got in there, she was sobbing on the floor, feeling incredibly embarrassed about what had happened and also intensely really angry. This vase, the shattered vase, was still on the floor. So I heard the story, and knowing that defy me more than I can love you is the way to get them back, I offered her a quick fix solution. I said, look, you could spend a few years in therapy if you wish. It'll cost you a lot of money. But I can fix this for you now if you wish. Right tonight, we can fix this, and I think we should do it right away. It'll cost you money, not as much as 3 years of therapy. But it's going to cost you. Would you like to hear the quick fix? And she's a very smart lady, and she said, yes, absolutely, I'd like to hear. I said, well, here's how you do it. We're going to get your kid to come home, and he's going to apologize to you for cursing you, which started this whole struggle. And when he does, you're going to apologize to him. Now, my guess is, when you apologize to him, he's going to say, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. And if he does that, here's what you're going to do. You're going to walk over to your break front, and you're going to take out one of those plates, those dinner plates, and you're going to smash it on the back of a chair. And you're going to tell him, I love you a lot more than I love my dinner plates. I'm so sorry. And I told her, if I was him, I would say, I don't believe you, and I'd go and break another one. And if he does, you go take another one, you break it. And if he breaks another one, well, you go break another one. And you keep doing it till there's either no dinner plates left or he trusts you. I asked her, can you do this? And we talked it through, and she said she thought she could. So I left the house, and we called, and we sent him home. Later that night, I found out that 9 dinner plates were broken. It took 9 plates, heirloom dinner plates. And she told us that when she went for the 10th, 8, she went for the 9th. He went over to her and he stopped her. And he said, Mommy, I believe you. And they cried together. And so started the healing. Defiance creates repair and attachment. Compliance doesn't. But when they defy, and we can reach inside that defiance, and we can understand it, so we can heal. The next thing we needed to do was understand that our parenting, our approach to parenting was off. We had to gain a more healthy historical context. That, by the way, that we did some 20 years ago, Kal v'chomer ben benosha kal v'chomer today, that the world has changed and advanced so much. But we had to understand there was this once, I spoke about this last conference, that there was this once upon a time, probably until the 50s maybe, in the secular world at large, there was a lid on society at large called deference to elders. This lid kept kids in place. There was a natural just a feeling that children felt we need to defer and have deference to our elders. Children got up and gave a seat, on a bus to someone older. That was natural once upon a time. Of course, today, what a joke. Your kids actually don't take buses anymore. They order you to take them somewhere in the car. When we were kids, it was like that. We didn't get off a chair at a dinner table without asking Rishus. Please, Mummy, darling, may I leave the table? If she didn't say yes, you sat. Today you try and do that with your kids, they'll all be psychotic, the whole lot. The world changed, and we had to adjust to this world where our expectations of our kids in terms of, what's chutzpah and what's not, was off. It was totally off. Someone, I quote this often, I wish I knew who said it originally, I just love the quote, that yesterday's discipline is today's abuse. And it's true, because we have the wrong picture in our heads. We have the picture from our own childhood. We have the picture how I grew up with the assumption I turned out okay, so let's just do the same thing with my kids. But I forgot or didn't know that lid that held kids respecting elders was over. I used to give workshops in schools years ago. I'd walk into a school, with my folder, my briefcase, to give a workshop in the class, to the teaching the staff. And a kid would hold the door open. They would say, "Can I help you?" And they'd say, "Oh, yes." And they'd hold the door for me and escort me to the Manal's office. 10 years later, I would arrive at a school and the kids would just be going in and ignore me completely. I would open the door to allow 10 kids to shoot in under my arm and basically knock me out the way, and then all disappear, leaving me standing holding the door. The world changed, and we have to change in our expectations of what the coding is inside us of what parenting should look like. We have to change. We had to shift that. We had to understand that. We had to move and realize that we need to rethink parenting at large and understand that probably most of the program that I have of expectations of what's normative childhood behavior is probably off. We had to learn to accept that. I heard a drasha one time from my Rabbi Mashgiach Shlita, where he quoted the pasuk in Koheles, in Eicha. Tishtach pena avnei kodesh b'rosh kol chutzos. The holy stones of the Chorban will be spread out on the street corners. And he said, Rashi says there, fascinating, the avnei kodesh elo habonim. These are children. And the Mashgiach fragt, what is he talking about? It's clearly talking about the destroyed Beis HaMikdash. The holy stones of the Beis HaMikdash will be strewn out on the street corners. Why is Rashi telling us, Elo Habonim, these are our children? And the Mashgiach pointed out, the Ala Peronius that have hit Klal Yisrael since the Chorban and on, were designed to create widespread tshuva, to bring us back to Rabbeinu Shalom. And what Rashi is pointing out very poignantly is that if we miss this message, and we miss the message of all the other Peronius and Nisyonis that hit Klal Yisrael through the ages, the Spanish Inquisition, Tach v'Tat, the Holocaust in our times, if we miss this message of what it's really about, then one day, Rashi is saying, Hashem will wake us up by hitting us in the most painful place, the place that hurts us the most, Elo Habonim. He'll hit us with our kids. We had to change our perspective and understand that we were looking at Makas HaKlal. This wasn't about me and my kids and my wife and I. Look at the Look at the group we have here. And we still represent a mashahu, a tip in the yam of what's actually going on in Klal Yisrael. We have to realize this is not about me and my kid, and I have to let go of my shame and my embarrassment and my hurt so I can refocus on what my kids need. What's going to help them? What will help them reach their destiny? We had to work on Shalom Bayis. Baruch Hashem, my wife and I enjoy a beautiful Shalom Bayis. It has come by hard work. It has not come naturally. Nobody ever gets married and lives happily ever after naturally. Nobody. There is no such man and woman who ever got married and just had a joyful life forever, tuned into each other naturally. It is unnatural. It's a good thing. I'm just saying it's unnatural. In this sugya, one of the many gifts of this sugya, and there's a piece of what I'm about to say that would apply to single parents equally, and I'll address that in a moment. But part of this sugya, the gift of it, is that you have to work on your Shalom Bayis. There is no other alternative. You have to. It may be one of the most crucial things you need to do. And if that's a struggle, go seek help. Find a therapist, humble yourself, get into treatment somewhere, work it out. The splitting that goes on for kids who are already struggling with trying to work out how to live their lives, the extra burden of splitting when they get mixed messages from their parents makes it an impossible task. How will they ever work out what's right and what's wrong if they're getting mixed messages from their parents? The potential, if there's going to be any, for reattachment is because you provide a home of love and comfort and safety that your children will fantasize that they want to be part of. You want to give a picture where your kids would fantasize and believe, one day I want to sit at your Seder with my children, your grandchildren. I'd like to be in your sukkah. And the reason I want to be there is because it's a happy place. It's a place where parents are mechabed each other, respect each other. It's a safe, nice, warm, loving place. That's why I want to be there. And we have to infect our children with that unconscious desire to want to return to us, not through drushes and speeches. That fails. But by the amazing gift Hashem gave to every home where the nature of children is to want to love their parents and want the love of their parents. We know this as adult children. As long as your parents are alive, whatever happened, you still wish they would love you, finally. You still want that love. So we have to infect our kids where they can actually dream of and think someday, somehow, I'll be back at your Seder. I'll be back in your sukkah. And without Shalom Bayis, without them experiencing the respect and love between husband and wife, we take that from them. And that's such a terrible loss. But I'll tell you something even more powerful. And this applies to even single parents bringing up homes. Imagine from our children's perspective how they look at us when we don't have the shalom in the home. We don't have the happiness in the home. When our kids struggle and they're not putting on tefillin, or she's not dressing sanua, or she has a boyfriend or a goyish boyfriend, there's struggles, serious struggles. And what they witness and experience is utterly miserable parents, ready to rend their garments and cry and put ashcloth and sack and ashcloth on themselves. What do they think? I'll tell you exactly what they think. What they think is, Doesn't look like this system is working very well for you, does it? That's what they think. Doesn't look like your Torah and mitzvahs is doing such a great job for you when you're miserable all day. When they catch their mother on Friday sobbing by licht, sobbing when she lights her candles, walking around miserable, and a father who's all tied up in knots of anger and pain when he's making kiddush and just wants to get it over and done with and get out. Imagine what the kids are feeling, and they're wondering, how is this Torah mitzvahs, this relationship with God and Yad, working for you? Apparently it isn't working very well, is it? Why would we expect them want to come back to our embrace if the home isn't safe, loving, and if they don't see us embracing our journey with love and acceptance? Why? Why would they want to come back there? We're pushing them away. Shalom bayis, I don't mean just the getting along with each other, but I mean shalom in your bayis, where your bayis is a place of peace and love and acceptance that represents to the kids, maybe this taka, and as they look around the world and they get older, they taka see that you got something pretty special going on there, which gives them the desire to want to be part of it. It is absolutely crucial. As I've said many times, one of the things we learned is that we will never fix our kids. I am not, look, I give droshes, you see that, right? But I will never take out the shtender and give a drosha to my kids where they'll say, wow, Ta, you're gone. Okay, that's it, we're all coming back to being yeshivish. That's not happening. We as parents will not be zeicher to some brilliant, insightful debate, conversation. I just got to show you this Rashi. Yeah, this will do it, If you just dress, for 30 days, it's muftach that you'll feel kedusha. What we do is we get the target that's painted on us off by having shalom bayis, where we give our kids a chance to look at themselves and be inspired from without. That inspiration, if it's ever going to come, will come from somewhere else. A mentor, a rebbe, a chance encounter, something outside the home. By us having shalom bayis, by us getting ourselves out the way and providing the warmth and love, we create the unconscious desire to see that event, to hear from that mentor, to hear a drasha, to observe some special miracle and event somewhere, and to be inspired by that external thing. We facilitate that happening by getting ourselves out the way and creating shalom bayis. I can't say it loud enough. Without it, we deprive our children of the ability to see any reason to want to change and return. It is absolutely crucial. What nourished us on our journey was through the eyes of Chazal. And I want to share 4 pieces that talked to me and my wife, that we hung on to as we went on our journey, that guided us and kept us strong as we went through this journey. The 4 things, well, let me do one by one. Here's the first one. The first one is that things are meant to happen. Things are meant to happen. Kadosh Baruch Hu is in charge. We're not. The Gemara Nida Tezayin on the base, Dorish Rabbi Chanina, tells a malach hamamuna halaharayin laila shmoi. There's a malach in charge of pregnancy, laila shmoi. Noitel tipa umamida lifnei hamakam. He takes a tipa of embryonic fluid from a pregnant mother and places it before the Rabbeinu Shalom and says, Tipa zumati aleh, what's going to be with this person? Chacham or tipesh, smart or stupid. Gibor or cholosh, strong or weak, asher or ani, wealthy or poor. Ve'ilu tzadik v'rosha loitema ki hakol b'dei shemaim chutz miyir shemaim. I think these three things, by the way, Chacham Utipish, Gibber Cholosh, Osha Oni, are the three environments we live in. Chacham is your intellectual functioning. Gibber Cholosh is your physical body. And Osha Oni is the world around you that impacts you. I think that's what it's referring to. The three dimensions in which we live. Hakol b'dei Shemaim chutz mi'yir Shemaim. V'sag Rashi. So Rashi says, what is Hakol b'dei Shemaim? And this is the key. Zog Rashi, Hakol b'dei Shemaim, kol midaisov v'koraisov shel Adam, boin lo b'gzeres melech. Kol midaisov v'koraisov, that means the character, personality of your child, the one they're born with, v'koraisov, and the events that happen to them, the exposure to that other kid down the block, to the sexual abuse that happened, to the bullying in school. Kol midaisov v'koraisov, the events that happen. Boin loy b'gzeres melech. This is Rashi. This is not contemporary magazines. I know, I left it out. We have to come to terms with this was meant to be. I asked Mashkiach one time that what about sexual abuse? That's Min HaShamayim? I guess so. I said to him, not good enough. Yes or no? He said, yeah, okay, yeah. I said, really? And he said to me, yes, of course it's Min. Everything's Min HaShamayim. I said, thank you, I'm going to quote you. I'm going to quote you. Everything's Min HaShamayim. What happened to the fundamentals of our belief when we go on this path of it was her, that friend that exposed my kid, it was this Rebbe who was abusive, it was that person that abused them, and now all our focus is about that person, like woe is me, this happened, it's Min HaShamayim. Kol midosav v'koraisiv shel Adam boin lo b'gzeres melech. What is going to impact your child is a gzeres melech. What we do with it, that's up to us. But the fact that they went through this nisayon and this exposure is gzeres melech, for us, we wouldn't have survived without seeing that clearly. Things were meant to be. They're Min HaShamayim. They're not in our hands. Don't waste energy and effort on that. How did that happen? Who did it? And why? And what? It's all irrelevant. And it's a waste of the very precious energy we have to deal with this. Wasting your time on that. Don't waste your time. Focus on now it's happened. What do we do about it? How do we help my kid with it? The second one is that we actually chose our lives. We actually chose our lives. Pasuk tells us, Ki yivne bayis chodosh v'sisa makkah al gagecha. You build a new house, you have to put a makkah, a border, a fence around the gag. Lo siya domim beisecha pen yipol hanoifel mimenu. Lest someone falls off the roof and die. The Medrash asks an obvious question. It says, Pen yipol hanoifel mimenu, lest the faller falls off the roof. Grammatically, it should have said, Pen yipol mimenu, lest someone falls off the roof. What do you mean, Pen yipol hanoifel, lest the faller falls off the roof? Rabbeinu Bachai and Kisisa asks this question. And the second pshat in Rabbeinu Bachai, he says, Al bi midrasha, he says these words. Ve'inyan ha-medrashu, Ki kol ha-nivroim kulam nivru b'cheftzon u'b'ritzonom. Everyone is created b'cheftzon u'b'ritzonom, with desire and understanding. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hodiam b'reishis habriya. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu explains to every neshama before it comes back at the beginning of the world. Kol inyonehem kulam. Everything that's going to happen to you. Think about our lives and your children. Kadosh Baruch Hu is Hodiam. He gives it to us and tells us what you're going to go through. V'kol ha-mikrim hasidim lovo aleim. And all the events that suddenly happen to us, They don't suddenly happen. And to our children, he told us. He told you everything. In berevach, in betzah, in manidei atzmim shel acherim, your parnosa. V'chein dorshu razal, kol ma'aseh bereishis l'datam nivru, l'tzivyonim nivru. V'akol rotzu v'kiblu. And everyone said, I want it and I accept it. The second principle, if we're going to be authentic, or honestly, if we're not going to believe that, like, I don't know what to do. How do you take a Rabbeinu B'chai and a Medrash and say, yeah, I'll keep Shabbos and I'll keep Kashrus and I'll put on tefillin, but that Medrash I'm not into? Like, how does that fit? And the Medrash says, V'kulam kiblu, ratzu v'kiblu. We all heard, think about right now, our tsar and suffering with our kids, what we're going through. V'kulam ratzu v'kiblu. We all accepted it. We knew it and accepted it because in Olam HaEmes, in the world of neshamas, it all made sense because of the struggles and the tikkunim and the work we'd be doing on ourselves. It made sense. The second principle was this, that we worked very hard, my wife and I, on embracing that we chose it. And we said it to each other frequently. We chose it. When we were in Tsar, I see you hurting, but we chose it. And we worked very, very hard on trying to accept that. You cannot cut conveniently that piece of hashkafa out of our Torah. On the contrary, why would you want to? We chose it. And we just have to humbly accept that and work out, how does that make us? How do we use that to make ourselves better and do our tikkunim if we chose it? Because we chose it for good reason. The third piece was that we chose our children and our children chose us. We have here today someone I haven't seen in a long time who years ago didn't realize what he gave me as a gift. When he gave me a copy of the Semech Hashem L'Tzvi, it was from I found it, or he found it, and one of us found it, but it was in the Lakewood Yaakov Metzias library, the library of old Sfarim. It was there, and I went and found it afterwards, after he told me about it, and I photocopied that page. And this Semech Hashem L'Tzvi described this Medrash in a very deep way. And in that Medrash he says, in his description of the Medrash, he says that Vadai ba'alma d'kshait, it has to be in the world of truth. The kulam bachu ach hatoiv la'atzmai. It cannot be that we chose anything but the best for ourselves in the alma d'kshait. It can't be in the world of truth. Here we can make mistakes in our choices. You can't make mistakes up there. Vadai, he says, we chose what was good. One time I had an audience, one of the times I had an audience by Maran Chaim Knievsky Shlita. I had this Semech Hashem L'Tzvi in my hand, and I was asking him about a few different things in Hashkafa to get them right. And one of the things I'd asked him was this thing about, I'd seen a Chazal somewhere that said or suggested very clearly that we choose our children, their neshamas, and they choose us. And I asked him if he knew where this source was. I had a witness with me, by the way. I always take an aid when I go to Gedolim. I don't trust myself. So I asked him, and he said, yes, there is such a makor. I asked him, do you know where it is? I've been looking for years. And he thought for a minute, he said, no, he couldn't remember. He said, but lama tasarich et zeh? What do you need it for? So I started launching into my whole psychology, I'm going to help people, I'm a psychologist, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, lama tasarich et zeh? Okay, so I started explaining again why I thought, how it would help people if they understood. They screamed at me the third time, and he grabbed this sheet from the Tzemach Hashem Letzvi out of my hand. And he said, Yesh lecha et zeh. You have it right here. What are you looking for? You have it. The Vadai Ba'alma D'Kshoit. Everyone chose the T'noim of their life. Everything. V'kulam rotzu v'kiblu. Can we have a moment of silence? Can we just one moment. Can we all just accept these beautiful neshamas, our children? We chose them. And they chose us. That means they relied on us to help them. That's why they chose us. And we chose them because up there, we believed we could help them with their struggles. We take a moment to just absorb that. We chose our kids, and they chose us. This helped my wife and I on this journey of ours to come to a much better place. And finally, I think this was my wife's favorite, that there's nothing new here. This is since Adam Arishon. Had some problems with his kids. The Avos HaKadoshim. David HaMelech. Where in Klal Yisrael was there a tekufa when people didn't have serious struggles with their children? There's no such thing. It's been throughout Klal Yisrael. It's part of our destiny. This issue of bringing up our kids and trying to work with them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the metzias of parents and children because the Torah said there's a mitzvah, kibbud av v'em. I know the Chinuch says that we have kibbud av v'em is because we have to have a korsa toiv. Biskarov has a different pshat. The Stachel Baraisa of Bari Alma, Hashem looked in the Torah and created the Metzias to shtim with the Torah. And the Metzias had a mitzvah, kibbud av v'em. So Hashem created a Metzias where that's very hard to do. Otherwise, what do you need the mitzvah for? There's no mitzvah in the Torah, breathe air. Breathe air. Thou shalt breathe air regularly. There's no mitzvah in the Torah. But there is a mitzvah kibbud av v'em because it's so hard to do. Because it shafts something in our tikkun and it helps us. It helps us to work on ourselves. So Hashem gave us this mitzvah. And this problem has existed throughout Klal Yisrael. And it will continue to exist. And we have to put it in perspective and stop feeling so sorry for ourselves. Because when we feel so sorry for ourselves, that gets in the way of us being the kind of person that our kids will look up and say, this thing is working for you. This system is working for you. Maybe there's something in that for me too. So the question that remains is, who are we now? What has this done for us? I can tell you that 25 plus years later, we are far better than we ever could have been without this problem. There's no chance that we could have been who we are. There's absolutely no suffix on earth that I would not have been who I am doing what I do, if not for the guidance of my children, who decided about my career choices for me. I guess I colluded with them up there, and we all said, we got a good plan for you, Ta. None of us here would be the person we are without these challenges. We have to become that person. We have to allow our children to take us to that place where we discover things that we could never have known about ourselves, strengths that we never knew we had, refinement of character that we never knew existed. and that we couldn't have tapped into unless we were forced to by this sugya. Yisod Avoda brings down B'Shem the Ari HaKodesh. I'll paraphrase just a couple of lines because it's late. De'enu doima Adam la'Adam miyom brias ha'Adam, brias ha'olam. No two people are alike since the beginning of the world. Ve'en Adam echad yochel l'taken mal shechaver l'taken. And no person can do what his friend has to do. It's his unique job. V'hainu sh'chol Adam yesh es yi'udav tafkida ois alav l'taken b'chayav. Everyone has their job in this world that's unique to them. And therefore, kol t'nai ha'chaim shel ha'adam b'gashmias ruchnias. The circumstances of your life in gashmias and ruchnias, ha'tovim v'raim, good and bad, kulam nisnu loi kafi ha'shayich l'tikkun olamai. They're all given to you so you could do your job in this world. There is nothing that wasn't given uniquely to you. We all have unique situations with our kids. As much as we're similar and we're here, but we're similar, we're not the same. There's no two kids we have are alike. Even in our own homes, we don't have two kids that are alike. And they challenge us in different ways. They bring out different koiches from us. That's our gift, says the Arizal. V'afa matzovim hakoshim b'chai Adam hem ganken emtsoyim shenosula b'chdei she'agia el tikuno. Even the very, very hard, schwer, painful things that happen to us in our life are given to us so we can reach our purpose and our tachlis. She'ein ra yored min hashamayim, because evil doesn't come down min hashamayim. V'akol hu l'toivus ha'odam k'dei she'yataknu b'zeh ha'shayich elov shal yidei zeh yasig yi'udoi u'tafkida ba'olamai. Because everything that comes to us is given to us to reach our tafkid. This is why we have those kids. They help us and we help them. And we have a perfect spiritual synergy between us where we go on this journey together, which we do as we reach our tafkid in this world. What does this do for us? It makes us humble. It gets rid of our gaiva. I hate to think how insufferable I might have been had I not had these struggles. I think my wife would agree. This challenge knocks out your ego. It just kicks it out. It makes us humble, which is tachlis of life. Anachnu ma. What are we? The yesod of all avoda is this rachik min ha'gaiva b'tachlis arichuk. Get rid of it, because it gets in the way. It's the shirish ra of all midas raos. And this sugya humbles us and takes it from us. The Zohar Kodesh says there's 3 reasons we suffer. 3 reasons. One is previous gilgul, tikkun neshama from a previous gilgul. One is kaparas aveinos, for things we did in this world, and the other is a matana to help us grow and steig. Which one don't you want? Which one don't you want? I want them all. I'll accept them all. One of the fundamental flaws of our entire system, this is not a judgment on anyone, it's a reflection. But one of the fundamental flaws of our entire system is that we don't prepare and educate our children for the realities of what this world is about. We do a partial job, but we don't do a complete job, and I have no clue why. I don't understand. In the first chapter of Mesilas Yesharim, Mesilas Yesharim tells us there are 3 reasons. Metzias ha'adam ba'olam hazeh v'ashloisha dvarim. There are 3 reasons we live in this world. 2 of them I think we're pretty good at. Lasses mitzvahs, v'la avoid. Do avodas Hashem, and do mitzvahs. What's the third one? Every child should be educated once a week. There should be a class on it. The third reason we live in this world. Every year they should learn more how to cope with it, understand it, and make sense out of it to prepare us for living in this world. What is the third leg? Lamod b'nisayon. To be omed b'nisayon. To embrace the nisyanis of this world that Hashem gives us in order we should grow. I'll finish with this. Over the years, when I was a therapist in the early years in Lakewood, I many times got phone calls from various Rabbanim and Gedolim who, on the behest of my clients, wanted to put their therapist straight about various ideas. I'm pretty sure that was their kavanah. At least that's what I experienced. It happened very, very many times. I graciously accepted the calls. And after a while it bothered me because, there's two sides here. I'm being told something, I have a emunah chachamim, but I think there's a responsibility to present another side. One time, late Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yosef Rosenblum, Zechasad Livracha, called me. He used to call me all the time. His gabbai would call me. And a lot of people in Lakewood, he was their Marid Asr, their Das Torah. And he would call me up, Gabbai, I thought it was like a bissel covered, the Rosh Hashiva, Vilsreden, there. Okay. So he came on, gave me his Das, and then he hung up, goodbye. After a while it bothered me, this is wrong. Like there's another side here. So they called one time, and he said to the Gabbai, told me the Rosh Hashiva, Vilsreden, I said, please tell the Rosh Hashiva, no. He said, what? I said, please no, I don't want to be talked at. I'm happy to be talked with. Please use those words. A few minutes later, Rosh Hashiva came on the phone and said, please explain. And I said, I'll be honest, there's another side. I don't want to mislead the Rosh Hashiva. He calls up, gives me his das, but there's stodim here. Maybe there's information the Rosh Hashiva wasn't given, and therefore I'm not going to listen anyway, and the Rosh Hashiva thinks I'm listening. It makes no sense. I'll be happy to have a conversation. In fact, I'd like to do it in person. I've never met the Rosh Hashiva. And he said to me, sure, come in. Please come. He was intrigued. Gave me a slot, 8:20 to 8:40. Epis Ma'ariv was 8:40. He gave me 20 minutes. I should come that night. I said, Gavaldik, covered. So I went to Borough Park. I was there early and knocked on the door early. And I came in, and we sat there till about 10:30, going at it. At the end of the conversation, the Shiva said to me, tell me something. He'd never really had a really honest conversation about what are we doing in therapy? Like, what is it? What are we after? And we had a fascinating conversation about it. And he said to me, explain it. Sum it up for me. I said, like, Berega Lachas, Zevi Hillel? He said, yeah, Zevi Hillel. Wasn't sure what to say. I was caught a bit off guard, but this is what I said. I said, the world, the Olam, believe that life is meant to be very enjoyable. You have a nice Shabbos, Chizuk, you have Yontef, you have a nice wife, you have a nice husband, you have Baruch Hashem, nice kinderlich, you have Simchas, you have your Brisson and your Kiddush and your Bar Mitzvahs and your Chasnas and your Sheva Brachas. And we have all these wonderful times in Shabbos and Yontef, and we really enjoy it, and we get these times. And in between, the Eibishter schickt various nisyonis, Schwerkeiten. And most people believe that we're meant to do our best to grow from these nisyonis when they happen, and then get back to enjoying life. Invigorated maybe, but enjoying life, which is the ikar. I said, in my humble opinion, I believe that's exactly the wrong way round. That really the truth of this world is called Olam HaNisyonis. This is the world of Nisyonis. Verkehrt, that's what Mr. Sharma says. La'asas mitzvahs la'avod v'lamed b'nisoyin. Through the Nisyonis we grow. Through the Nisyonis we shed our gaiva. Through the Nisyonis we come close to Hashem. The problem is, to deal with Nisyonis every single day of your life is schwer. It's too hard. So the Eibishter gives you a nice Shabbos, a nice Yontef, a nice wife, a nice husband, beautiful kids, simchas, nachas, so you can recharge your spiritual batteries so that you can go back to life growing from the Nisyonis, charged by all the wonderful things he gives us in between. Yoshiva got up, walked around his desk and gave me a kiss. Gave me a kiss. He said, wow. He was absolutely misragish. Later on I found out from one of his sons, it's because he said the same thing. He was amazed that someone else, especially a secular psychologist type person, could have that hashkafa and see that truth. Lamed b'nisoyin is why we're here. We learned to embrace that. We learned to let it go deep inside us, that this is why we're here. Without it, we'd be arrogant, we wouldn't be humble, and we'd miss the boat. We'd miss why we're here. We'd waste our lives. Accepting all these things, internalizing these messages, has got us to where we are. And I can tell you this, I say this in my wife's name and my name, and you could ask her, she'll say it very deeply. We wouldn't change a thing.
Say it again.
We wouldn't change a thing. It's been a long journey. It's certainly not over. But honestly, we wouldn't change a thing. It's made us who we are. And I believe that those of us who can embrace this journey and see it this way, you almost don't want it over because you see what it does for you and how you help your kids. This is our journey. This is our gift. We embrace it, we accept it, and we grow from it. I wish us all the hatzlacha, the strength, the insight to use these gifts. Have a good Shabbos.